So if you're doing like a little deck or a pergola, once you go through the building permit process, you're adding at least $4 or $5 grand onto the job.
Let's work.
G'day and welcome to the Make It With Myles podcast. I'm Myles Clark, your beloved host here, and we are here to talk all things building and constructions, renovations, alterations, DIY advice, real estate advice through the lens of a building inspector. And every now and then we dabble in a bit of personal development because that's the shit I kind of like. We have two formats to the podcast. We have the shed. The shed is where we discuss all things related to building construction and the real estate industry, which is the most common thing we do. And then we have the journey. The journey is where we dabble in a bit of personal development stuff every now and then, which you guys get to experience. How exciting. Now, on this episode, we will be discussing basic documentation for a building permit. Now, this is something that I come across very often with regards to small jobs, is people have no idea what they need to get their job underway, to get the building permit, and to execute the project itself. This topic is going to be specific with small projects. I'm talking about pergolas, maybe some small extensions, more or less decks, jobs that are over 10 grand that need a building permit, need to be done by a registered builder, which is practically anything you touch will be over 10 grand. So this is just the basic items you need, okay? When you do bigger projects, you need like planning approval, and there's all whole other documentation that you may need to go through council to get, I want to build this ugly looking structure on this block of land. They've got to approve it. There's this whole process. It's a pain in the ass. You don't want to get through that. It's horrible. Anyway, for basic things like decks and pergolas, these are the documentations that you need. First things first is you will get, you need to engage a building surveyor. Ideally, I highly recommend you go through a private building surveyor. Local councils do have their own building surveyors. They are already up to their ass in workload and they don't really want to hear about it. You can used to be able to sort of apply through the council directly. Private building surveyors are much easier to deal with. They have good relationships with the councils. They are the ones that issue the building permit and they make your life much easier. So the building surveyor themselves is going to request specific documents that will form everything required for the building permit. The first thing they're going to ask for is the application for a building permit. You wouldn't bloody believe it, would you? So this is just probably a 1 or 2 page document which says, your name, gives title documentation, so who owns the land. It'll talk about who's the builder, who's the architect, price of the job, is it going to be owner builder, is it going to be engaging a builder, all those sort of basic documentation that you need for the form. On top of that, you'll need to supply the building surveyor with architectural drawings. So you need to get an architect to sign off on the drawings. They need to be registered, so you can sign off on the drawings to say it complies and everything is up to scratch and up to standard. On the architectural drawings, you'll have like a site plan, which has the whole house itself. You'll have elevations, specific materials, just the basic odds and sods like that. After that, you'll get the engineering. The engineering will tell you how deep the footings are, the size of the beams, size of steel posts, and as well as that, it'll give you the computations required that complies with the engineering design itself. So you'll get those two in particular. On top of that, you'll need to get a soil report done. Soil report is they come in, they test the soil for its class of soil, or it goes to its bearing depths for the engineer. Anyway, the engineer uses that documentation to design the property itself and design what they need to, how deep the footings go, how big the footings are, all that sort of stuff. On top of that, you'll need to get a energy report if that's required. So if this is for an extension or something like that, or renovation, then you will need to get an energy report done. They just assess the property itself, assess the design, and they say what type of windows are going to be, the insulation is going to be used in the roof, in the ceilings, in the walls, and they give you a rating based on that. There's a whole lot of variables that go in place, but that's basically what you need, energy report, which forms part of the building permit process, and you go from there. As well as that, you will need a contract from the builder to say that I have engaged XYZ builder, this is the cost of the job, blah, 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 blah. And you will need your builder's warranty insurance certificate of currency. So when you sign up with a builder, you need to have the builder's warranty insurance certificate in place. They do that at the start of the project before anything happens. That actual certificate you get forms part of the building permit application so you can proceed with the job. This is to stop builders going ahead with projects without having any insurance in place. It's to hold them accountable, which is completely fair and reasonable. As well as that, in some circumstances, you'll need to do a bushfire assessment report for the site. The bushfire assessment report gives you a BAL rating for the property itself. This is something that's been introduced in the last decade. What that talks about is its risks to, obviously, fire. That does change the building design a fair bit. If you're in like a Bell 40 or in, high risk area, some of the building elements that you might want to use, you might not be able to use, and you have to find an alternative or implement sort of specific alternative methods. It just protects the home from any embers that come into the fire, from a fire to the property itself. So it's not a matter of adding in sprinkler systems, but it's some building elements and what you can use and what you can't use. So that may be required. It may not be required. Most likely the building surveyor will just ask you if you need it or not, and then you just action accordingly. So to recap, very straightforward. If you're going to do a deck or a pergola or something pretty straightforward, the documentation you're going to need is you're going to fill out the application form with the building surveyor. As well as that, you will have your architectural drawings, you'll have your engineering drawings, engineering computations, soil report, maybe an energy report, most likely not. They're sort of the bare basics that you need. If you're an owner builder, you really need to understand and learn all scopes of this sort of stuff. If you're engaging a builder to do this process, it's going to be a simple conversation with the builder saying, what do I need to do? He will just give you all the guidance you need. And what it's going to look like is he's going to say, go to XYZ building surveyor, who I use, who's a gun, or pick your own. I don't really care. They will give you a hit list of all the documentation that you do need. They are sort of the basics. So if you're going out, it's not an overwhelming process, but something you really need to understand is it does cost money. So if you're doing like a little deck or a pergola, once you go through the building permit process, you're adding at least 4 or 5 grand onto the job just to get the documentation in order, just to get the building permit, just to start the project itself. You'll be looking at engaging the building surveyor, which will be a couple of $1,000. Easy soil report, $1,000 for that. Engineering, looking at maybe $1,000 for that. Drawings, $1,000. It just keeps going on and on. So just be mindful that it will cost a fair few dollary-doos just to get that little deck over the line and built really. So be mindful of that when you're doing these little projects. Don't build anything illegal. It's just not worth the hassle. Once councils these days go around with drones and they look at past pictures and new pictures to determine if new structures have been built in people's backyards. So they're getting pretty tech savvy these days. So there's no getting around it, unfortunately, because I must admit, building permits for some of these projects is a piss take. But we've got to play by the rules, so we play by the rules. And that's it. If you found any value in this whatsoever, please like, subscribe, and share. And look after yourselves. I'm going to go on holidays. So see you in a week. Take it easy. Bye.
Let's work. I get it.